You will lose everything you own if you don't pay us by Friday. I read those words on a glossy invoice sitting on my kitchen table, my kitchen the same one where my grandfather taught me to fix a leaky faucet, and for a second I thought it was a joke until the voice on my porch said them again like a verdict. I've lived in this house since 1978. I don't belong to any HOA, and yet a woman in a blazer with a clipboard told me I owed $4,200 or she'd put a lien on my home. That was the morning my life quietly cracked open. I was sitting at my table editing wedding photos, the smell of coffee and cut grass through the open window, when a black sedan rolled up like it had a purpose. 3 people stepped out, a woman in her 50s with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. 2 men in cheap suits who didn't speak but stood like an accusation. She introduced herself as Karen Mitchell. President of the Oak Ridge Homeowners Association extended a hand, then laid a color invoice across my counter. It read, 18 months overdue, in neat columns. Fees, penalties, a gold-sealed logo that looked official enough to make my skin crawl. Mr. Townsend, she said, clipped and precise, you must remit payment within 10 days, or we will place a lien on your property. I told her the truth. I told her the deed went back to my grandfather. There were no covenants, no bylaws, nothing that put me under anyone's rule. Karen's smile tilted, not angry, not apologetic, just sharpened. Old deeds don't supersede current regulations, she said. If you'd like to dispute this, feel free to hire an attorney, but it'll cost you more than just paying. She backed away, her heels clicking on the concrete men following. The car idled until it was gone. I stood on the porch for a long minute, invoice in hand, the perfume she wore, chemical too strong, clinging in my nose like a warning. At first I thought it was a clerical mistake. I searched Oak Ridge online, county records, state filings, nothing. No registered association, no office, no directory. The invoice had no business address, only a P.O. box and a Gmail contact. My security camera had recorded their whole visit. I rewound it and saved the file, the woman's face clear as anything. Then I found a plain white envelope in my mailbox. Inside, one typed line in caps, they've done this to others. Don't trust them. My heart dropped. It wasn't a mistake. It was a setup. Over the next week, the pressure became a grind. Emails landed at 6 a.m. with subject lines like, urgent final notice, all from Karen. Voicemails at 11:30 p.m. That same clipped voice telling me legal action had begun. Flyers appeared on porches, a photo of my house circled in red with the word delinquent stamped across it. Neighbors I'd waved to for years looked at me sideways. Linda Blackwell, who lives 3 doors down, pulled me aside one afternoon and confessed, trembling, that she'd paid $3,500 last year because they'd threatened her. Hearing that an old woman had been bullied into handing over her savings, something in me hardened. This was no longer about an invoice on my counter. It was about a pattern. I hired a lawyer, Quinn Mercer, a sharp, efficient woman who asked the right questions and didn't waste breath. Quinn pulled state and county certifications for me, no Oak Ridge Community Association registered anywhere in the state, no articles of incorporation, no listed officers. If they can't prove they exist, she said, they have no legal standing to collect dues or to put a lien. Relief arrived like a hand on my shoulder, warm and heavy. But the threats didn't stop. They escalated. More emails, more calls, a lawsuit served on my doorstep claiming $4,200 plus interest and legal fees. A sheriff handed me the complaint like a small bomb. The document read like a trap professional full of legal citations. The point wasn't legal precision, it was intimidation. There were nights I doubted myself. I sat alone at my kitchen table, the complaint opened, Quinn's voice in my head, and I felt small and foolish. Had I missed some new law? Was I naive? I pictured the house lost, the mortgage calls, the humiliation. It would have been so easy. Pay sign, move on. That thought visited me like a warm, dangerous seduction. For a moment I almost folded. I pictured Linda's hands, the way she'd looked down when she told me she'd paid. I thought of neighbors who'd been quiet out of shame. The what-ifs slammed into me until I had to stand up and walk around the block just to stop the dizzying spins in my head. Then, I got a message someone had posted on a neighborhood app about a letter, and a man messaged me to meet at the library. He slid a folder across the table without introducing himself. Inside were letters identical to mine. The same logo, the same threatening language, but addressed to other names, one for $6,000, another for $2,000. He told me he'd paid because they'd threatened his family. He'd tried the police and been told it was civil. That's when the pieces locked together. It wasn't a single bad actor. It was a scam with a pattern, different association names, the same woman, the same playbook. I stopped asking myself if I was overreacting. I started asking who else had been hurt. We started to collect names. Ethan, the plumber, Samantha, the teacher. More people came forward, older folks who'd paid cash because they were scared. We made a spreadsheet, dates, amounts, methods of payment, copies of fake invoices. Quinn said enough victims, and there's not just civil wrongdoings, but criminal wire fraud, extortion, possibly RICO if this went across state lines. So we compiled evidence and sent it not just to the county, but to the district attorney's fraud unit, to the state attorney general, to the FBI. The whole thing felt suddenly bigger than my little kitchen table. The investigation was methodical. Agents followed the money trace deposits, subpoenaed banks. What they found didn't look like good faith community fees, it looked like theft. Large deposits into personal accounts, transfers to family members, then a purchase in Lake Tahoe paid almost entirely in cash. There were bribes, too. A low-level clerk at the county recorder's office who admitted taking cash to create fake filing receipts. When the FBI tied the deposits to property purchases and unexplained wealth, the language in their emails to us shifted from potential to "we have probable cause." Early one morning, the phone rang the detective with the tone that should make you breathe, if not relieved, at least prepared. "We're moving in tomorrow," she said. "If you want to be there, be at Elm and Birch at 6:15. I drove through streets still dark with sleep, sat in an unmarked car with a vest that read "Observer," and watched a team slide into position like something out of a movie. No lights, no sirens, just impression and inevitability. Agents knocked hard 3 times. The door opened. A woman in a bathrobe staggered into the light, face pale. Hair a mess. They read her rights. She tried to speak, but the voice reading the Miranda warning was flat and final. "Mrs. Mitchell, you are under arrest for wire fraud, extortion, money laundering, and racketeering under the RICO statute." I watched her hands go behind her back into cuffs. I watched the click. She was not theatrical. She was small and suddenly ordinary. They hauled boxes, files, hard drives out of her house for an hour. Neighbors watched from lawns. Coffees halted mid-sip faces that for weeks had looked at me with suspicion, now looked at the scene with mouths open. Her husband and sister were taken in separate actions across town. Prosecutors prepared more charges than any of us had dared hope. At the arraignment, the courtroom listed counts wall to wall, dozens of fraud counts, extortion counts, money laundering. RICO. Bail denied. The judge's words were short, implacable. She would remain in custody pending trial. A week later, in civil court, the fake lawsuit against me, the one that had threatened my house and drained my sleep, was dismissed with prejudice. The judge issued something I never expected to hear. A county courtroom say the court ordered the dissolution of any entity claiming to operate under the name Oak Ridge Community Association. He read it out loud. The sentence landed like a closing door. The plaintiff was sanctioned for filing a fraudulent suit. The order said that any future attempts to collect under that name would be referred to law enforcement. That was the moment the machine finally acknowledged what we already knew. This wasn't community governance, it was organized theft, dressed up in stationery. I left that courthouse hollow and not triumphant. Watching Karen Mitchell led away, seeing boxes of forged paperwork carried out, felt like a slow exhale. Relief with an undercurrent of exhaustion. I didn't stand on steps and wave flags. I walked to my car and thought about how many nights people had sat awake, how many had given up savings thinking the system would swallow them if they didn't comply. I thought about Linda and Ethan and Samantha, about the clerk who'd taken bribes and the federal agents who'd sorted months of noise into threads of proof. Justice had arrived in paperwork and warrants and decisions, blunt instruments, not lyric ones. You can be intimidated by appearances, a logo, a suit, a clipboard, and for a lot of good people those things are the difference between fear and resistance. I almost folded, but I didn't. Because when something threatens your house, it's not just property on the line. It's dignity. It's the small, unglamorous right to sleep at night without someone else deciding what you owe. Justice showed up slow and bureaucratic and stubborn, and it mattered. Don't let fear be the measure of your choices.